Now, today is a pretty significant day in Australian political history. It's one that I'm surprised not too many people have spoken about because its contrasts to current political life are pretty staggering. On this day, 30 years ago, Bob Hawke won the first of his many elections for the Labor Party. On this day, 30 years ago, that bloke became our Prime Minister. A man who clearly had the common touch, a bloke who, when he went anywhere near fellow Australians, would be almost more distracted by them when he walked into a room full of normal Aussies rather than the high-profile people. A bloke who was as at ease with the common man as he was the President of the United States. One of the great Labor leaders and, to be honest, one of the great Prime Ministers as well. A charismatic figure to this day. Still, when he decides to, if he wants to make news, he can make it around the country, and he's now in that position almost as a country's grandfather. But I want to contrast that man and the common touch that he had with our current Prime Minister. Now, I showed you last night this footage. I want you to think about this. 30 years ago, that bloke's the Prime Minister. 30 years later, Julia Gillard's the Prime Minister. That's footage I took on my iPhone last night at the Rudy Hill RSL. It's a bistro full of normal Australians, and she walked straight past them. Wouldn't even look at those people. She went into a room and had a conversation, not with people from Western Sydney, but people that she's got every right to meet, but they were people who are bloggers. No disrespect to the world of blogging, and no doubt we'll have some of them on the show soon. But that's not the point of these few days. That was last night. Adding to that today, this was the Prime Minister when she left her hotel room in Western Sydney. Have a look at this. It's a simple wave to some protesters. I'll tell you who some of those protesters were. Yeah, there were some of the right-wing ratbags, but an awful lot of people who were involved in that protest today, or at least wanted to have their say at the Prime Minister, were people who represent returned service people. They are frustrated and they are angry at this Prime Minister, this government in our country, for the complete lack of financial support that is here for returned service people. Now, the reason I show that this evening, as well as the footage from last night, and play it on the day that's 30 years to the day since one of the great Prime Ministers and one of the most common blokes to become the Prime Minister, is worth the contrast, is because even after that moment where the Prime Minister just gave the royal wave, got in the car and drove off, not a single person from the Prime Minister's office walked over to those people and said, "So what are your concerns?" Not a single person from the Prime Minister's office, and I know there are an awful lot of them there in Western Sydney. I saw them lurking around, avoiding me like the plague, but lurking around last night in Rudy Hill. Not a single person from the Prime Minister's office walked up to that group representing the people who have gone and fought for this country, who come back and who get 4/5 of bugger all when it comes to compensation for injuries they have received while defending this country. That is a disgrace. And it's a disgrace that 30 years on from one of the great victories and one of the great political characters in Australian politics and Labor politics, that somebody who would have been grown up and inspired by Bob Hawke doesn't even look people in the eye when she walks through a bistro in an RSL, let alone sends one of her people to go and have a chat to people representing people with a legitimate concern, people who go off and fight for this country. It's a disgrace. So, happy Hawkey Day, wherever you happen to be. And there's quite a few lessons this Prime Minister should have learnt by now, but let's be honest, it's way too late. Now, I made some fun out of the idea, and I'm going to do that a lot this year during the election campaign, is that I made some fun of the Prime Minister when she was reading, remember that book to kids? Now, politicians hate when I do this. It causes trouble for our Canberra Bureau, but I want to show you this because I want to show you some of the nonsense that is actually involved in politics. Tony Abbott was in Melbourne today and he went to a normal family and he decided to step in and he's put on a bit of a show for the cameras, as you just saw there, going through the different bills. Now, I love the awkwardness that is always there of these stupid stunts that are done for cameras. There's no real conversation going on. And in the same way that it was really awkward when the Prime Minister was reading a book to school kids, cue Tony Abbott and a very awkward normal conversation about family bills with a normal person with macaroons on the table, just in case the alternative Prime Minister popped by in Melbourne today. Have a look.
Thanks so much for coming out this morning. Lovely to be here. Now, who is responsible for this marvellous morning tea?
My sister is.
Very good, very good. Well, it looks lovely, really nice. And anyway, and you've got a few bills here, Rosie, is that right?
Yes. Before and after carbon tax.
Yeah, it's been a real shock for a lot of people, hasn't it?
It's the ongoing costs, it's the small things that accumulate over time. It's the electricity bill that then not only puts up my electricity bill, but puts up the supermarket's electricity bill, which puts up the cost of living.
It cascades through the economy.
We're going to do that to all sides of politics. We'll do it all the time. It's the nature of modern politics. But the joy of this show is I get to show you the unedited bit, not just the 2-second bit that appears in the news.